Are you currently sitting down, standing up, or out walking whilst listening to this talk? Our bodies weren't designed to sit all day. They were designed to move. But due to the technological revolution, there has been an increase in labour-saving devices, not only in our homes, but in our leisure time, the way in which we commute to work and to school, and a change in occupations, which have meant that our lives have become much more sedentary compared to our ancestors. During the last century, jobs in the workplaces have changed considerably. The automation of some job roles have removed the need for any traditional physically intensive jobs, such as those in the farming and the manufacturing industries. The proportion of jobs requiring moderate intensity physical activity has decreased dramatically from 50% in 1960 to 20% more recently. So during this same period, there's been an increase in sedentary and computer-based occupations, many of which would previously have involved some kind of light physical activity. For example, we don't have bus conductors walking around the bus collecting our fare anymore. This is done by the bus driver from his sedentary position. Some physically active farming roles have been replaced by machines, with a farmer sitting down to operate these. And one of the consequences of this decline in physical activity in the workplace has been a decrease in our daily energy expenditure, with physical activity being replaced by sedentary behaviour. And a consequence of this change in energy expenditure has contributed to the obesity pandemic. So although obesity has a multifactorial etiology, with changes to diet and sleep also playing an important role, the increase in sedentary behaviour over time is a fundamental factor. So what is sedentary behaviour, and why is it so important that we study this? So sedentary behaviour includes any sitting, reclining or lying, and is characterised by low energy expenditure. It is a ubiquitous physical behaviour on the movement continuum and is not just the absence of physical activity. Sedentary behaviour occurs in different domains and environments. So work can involve long periods of sitting. Commuting can include sitting when travelling in cars or by public transport. Household sedentary time includes activities such as television watching, screen time and personal computer use, and leisure time such as socialising with friends. Do you remember those days? So hopefully they'll be here again soon. But after this talk, maybe you will think about how long you sit for in each of these domains. There is mounting evidence that high levels of sedentary time are independently associated with a number of health-related outcomes, as well as obesity. So these include things such as a cardiovascular disease, cardiometabolic outcomes, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and premature mortality. Sitting can also have immediate effects on things like our blood circulation. It can decrease our lung capacity, leading to less oxygen in our system and therefore less energy. Sitting down also means that we don't always engage in our lower back muscles and our core. And some physiology experts have hypothesised that the act of just sitting decreases or deactivates an enzyme that is responsible for metabolizing and breaking down fat. Consequently, breaking up sedentary time with short and frequent movements is known to have beneficial associations with cardiometabolic markers, blood pressure, and levels of fatigue. When we stand up, our energy expenditure increases and our muscle activity increases. Too much occupational sitting time has been linked to a number of health and work-related outcomes also. So, for example, reduced productivity through presenteeism at work, occupational fatigue, being less engaged at work, increased work stress levels, and a higher prevalence of musculoskeletal conditions. So how much do we sit? So the data I'm about to present are data from a number of studies over the years that have been conducted prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So on average, adults of working age spend up to 9 hours of their waking time in sedentary behaviours. So it's around 60 to 70% of their waking day. Around 2 out of 3 adults also sit for greater than 2 hours per day watching television. And the percentage of adults using a computer for more than an hour outside of work has increased from 29% to 50% just during this century. However, the composition of our sedentary time outside of work has changed over this same period, with an increase in the time spent in sedentary transport, alongside an increase in sedentary leisure time and screen time, compared to a decrease in other leisure time sedentary behaviours such as reading or listening to music. And for those of us who are economically active, the majority of our sedentary time is accumulated in the workplace. For example, desk-based workers report approximately 6 hours of sedentary time during working hours, with white-collar workers reported to spend up to 85% of their time at work sitting. And this is compared to about 40% in blue-collar workers. Desk-based workers also spend up to half of their sitting time at work in prolonged unbroken bouts. So this is sitting for periods of 30 minutes or more without moving up to a standing position. And furthermore, for desk-based workers, workdays tend to be more sedentary than non-work days. So this was our normal before COVID. For those of us who are office-based, we sat a lot of the time. And because everyone else was sitting in an office, we didn't question it. This was our normal, our pre-COVID normal. Even though our bodies weren't designed to sit all day, our environments are designed for us to sit. If we were to walk into a room for a meeting and see chairs around a desk, we would automatically sit down. But if there weren't any chairs, would we still be able to conduct that meeting successfully? So having worked in this research area for a number of years now, I've gotten used to changing from sitting to a standing position more often, and I've been surprised at the reactions from other people. So for example, at a physical activity and sedentary behaviour conference, it's normal for more than a third of participants to choose to stand during talks. However, I was once at a research seminar at university, and after the main talk I got up to stand and I went to the side of the room for the Q&A session, and a lady who was sat close by to me reached over and said, "Are you okay?" Standing was not a normal behaviour in this environment. I also often invite students to stand up during lectures, and I can count on one hand the number of students who have taken me up on this offer over the past few years. So how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected our sedentary behaviour for those office desk-based workers who are now more likely to be working at home? So the COVID-19 pandemic, as we know, led to the UK government issuing national restrictions, and as part of these, employees were or have been encouraged to work at home where possible. And this is where many desk-based workers have been for nearly 12 months now. These restrictions will undoubtedly have changed people's participation in their normal daily activities, which may inadvertently have increased their sitting time. Many employees will likely to continue to work from home for the foreseeable future, which could have a consequential impact on health, work and work-related outcomes for many years to come. Therefore, there's a need to assess the impact of these changes in lifestyle behaviours in those whose working lives have changed substantially because of the COVID restrictions. In May 2020, during the first UK lockdown, we invited working adults to complete a short online survey to identify any changes in people's daily lifestyle behaviours related to working practices, and their sitting time, their physical activity, and any changes to musculoskeletal conditions. For those of you who aren't in the UK, just to give you some background, on the 23rd of March 2020, the UK government introduced a number of national restrictions that are now referred to as Lockdown 1. The main instruction was to stay at home to slow down the spread of coronavirus, and the British people are only allowed to leave home for limited reasons. So these were things like shopping for basic necessities, to take one form of exercise a day, for any medical need, or to provide care for a vulnerable person. And lastly, travelling to and from work, only where this was absolutely necessary for work that couldn't be done at home. A new normal had begun for many. So from our survey, and before the COVID restrictions, only around 10% of participants carried out some or all of their work from home. However, during lockdown 1, this increased to 70%. And for every 4 out of 10 adults who found themselves working at home, they were also responsible for homeschooling. This impacted on their day-to-day routine for 90% of them. So there'll be adults all over England this weekend looking forward to this coming Monday when children return to school. I know that I am one of them. So back to the survey. When asked about physical behaviour whilst working, excuse me, participants were less likely to stand while working at home. They were less likely to take regular breaks from sitting or to carry out any physical activity during breaks or lunchtime when compared to during those COVID restrictions. However, people would like to do more of these though after the restrictions are lifted. When asked about the different types of physical activity that people were doing before and during the COVID restrictions, there was a significant increase in the percentage of people who walked for leisure, who ran outdoors, cycled outdoors, used weights at home, and the biggest increase was seen in those who participated in online exercise classes. So thank you, Joe Wicks, for that. Some types of physical activity were not possible under lockdown 1 restrictions. For example, swimming, team sport, and in-person classes, exercise classes. And for those who walked as part of their commute, this reduced from 50% to 15%. We also asked those who wore fitness trackers to compare their average steps per day from before and during those COVID restrictions. And the average number of steps reduced from 11,000 today to 9,500 per day. Survey participants were also asked about their sitting, standing, and their walking time as a percentage of a typical weekday, and also for their working hours. There was a significant increase in sitting time during COVID restrictions compared to before the restrictions, and this was true for both the weekdays and the working hours. So, for example, the percentage of sitting time during working hours increased from 70 to 76%. This is equivalent to about 30 more minutes each day during working hours sitting, which could lead to detrimental effects on health. And both standing and walking time were equally replaced by this increase in sitting time. Survey participants also reported higher rates of musculoskeletal issues during lockdown 1 compared to before the COVID restrictions. For example, neck pain increased from 40 to 50%. And the highest percentage differences were seen in the upper and the lower back, with percentage increases of 45 and 30% respectively. So the workplace should ideally enhance both health and productivity, but it's not known how the new normal of working at home can encourage movement, with many home workers still bound by a number of COVID-related restrictions. Changes to our working environments are dependent on available resources and support from our employers. However, we can make small modifications too to our home office settings and to our individual behaviours, which can consequently increase our activity and productivity during working hours, and ultimately see reductions in harmful sitting time. So what can we do ourselves at home? This new normal is an opportunity to do things differently. So the following are some simple tips and tricks to reduce sitting time and break up our sitting time whilst working at home. So we know that there are health benefits for moving every 20 to 30 minutes or so. So try using software applications on mobile phones or computer extensions to set reminders to move or stretch every 20 to 30 minutes. Don't have a bin in the same room when you work at home. Get up and walk to the bin in the kitchen, for example. Have a small glass with you, so you need to go and fill it up more regularly with water. Stand up whilst talking on the phone or join a Teams or a Zoom meeting. Walk up and down the stairs immediately before or after meetings so you feel that you're actually going or leaving somewhere. If you can, get a standing desk, and there's evidence that these can reduce daily sitting time. If you don't have a standing desk, could you put your laptop on a raised surface such as a kitchen worktop just for short periods to alternate from sitting to standing? Stretch out those achy joints. Have a look at some desk yoga exercises online, for example. Take a lunchtime walk, or can you have a walk-in meeting? You still use your phone or use Teams on your phone. If you have more than one bathroom, go to the bathroom that's furthest away. Eat lunch away from your working space at home. Maybe even organise virtual challenges with colleagues. For example, the number of flights of stairs climbed each day, or the first one in your team to climb a mountain. So for those of you working at home, you would have to climb the equivalent of 3,687 flights of the average home stairs to reach the top of Mount Everest. So what could the new normal for home working look like for you? Get up and stand up. I'd like to thank my co-investigators on the COVID survey, Dr Charlotte Edwardson and Professor Malcolm Granite, and to thank you for listening to my TEDx talk today.